Okay, yesterday in Hilchos Tefillin we were learning about, the Torah says it should be al yodcha. One? Okay. Yad keya, the weaker hand. So therefore you have to put, we discussed what is the definition of a weaker hand. Is it only writing? Is it primarily writing and everything else? And so on we discussed yesterday. Now, B'chlal is a very interesting shaila. Where does it say in the Torah you have to wear tefillin every day? It just says, and what is actually the mitzvah of tefillin? Is it every day? Is it not every day? How do we know it is every day? So the fact that you have to put tefillin on every day, we learn out from a pasuk that says concerning tefillin, miyamim yamima, for all days bygone. But it says yamim yamima, so from there the halacha learns out that you have to wear tefillin every day. Now technically, the mitzvah of tefillin is to wear it a whole day, because the Torah doesn't say when. But like we learned, and years ago, many people that were learning, Bachrim in yeshiva, or people just teachers or not working in the fields, would wear tefillin a whole day. That stopped a few hundred years ago because when you wear tefillin, you have to have proper thoughts, and your body has to be proper. You can't pass gas, you can't burp, generally in tefillin, you have to behave respectfully. You're not allowed to have any foreign thoughts. So, because there was what's called Yeridas Hadeiros, the generations went down, so then people stopped wearing tefillin a whole day. In fact, we know today, very few people, in Eretz I know there's a bunch of yeshivas where the kids run around with tefillin the whole day, but generally speaking, the custom is universally that you don't wear tefillin a whole day because, again, you need the proper respect of the tefillin. But the fact that the Torah says, al levavchem, Torah says you put it on your hand. So maybe you put it here. Why do we put the tefillin here? And the muscle facing the heart. So the Gemara says, because it says, al levavchem v'al nafshechem. Okay? So therefore the Gemara learns that the tefillin should be facing the heart. Now if you have it going outward, then it's obviously not facing the heart. So you put it in the inside, even though it's on your hand, but it's still facing the heart. So therefore the fact that it's facing, that's what the Gemara learns, the proper place of tefillin is not here, it's also called yad. But the real place of tefillin is on the kibbutz, is called the muscle, and you face it down towards the heart. Okay, and that's beinenecha. Okay.
Is there a difference in the angle? Sometimes if you go mamish right here, it's just
as long as it's in the direction facing the heart. You can't put it, but basically what it says you can do is putting the tefillin facing outward. That you can do. It has to be. And beineinechem is also, again, it doesn't mean between your eyes. It means on your forehead, in the place which is in between the eyes. Okay, so now tefillin have to be, if tefillin not put in the right place, let's say instead of putting the head tefillin here, you're wearing them here or here, you're just not getting to the mitzvah. Because the Gemara learns that it has to be in a proper place, and the knot has to be on the bone in the back. There's a lot of dinim involved. The tefillin have to be worn in the proper place. Therefore, what happens if you're borrowing somebody's tefillin or a leather stretches? So after a while, you're borrowing somebody's tefillin, you have a small head, they have a big head, and the tefillin come down here. So you can't wear such tefillin. You're going to have to make the knot smaller, tighter, that it's going to fit you properly. But then you're going to have to put it back to make sure because otherwise then the guy's upset, and then you're borrowing his tefillin without permission, then you're stealing. So you have to make sure you're allowed to borrow somebody's tefillin without permission, but you have to put it back where you found them, you have to wrap them the way you found them. Plus, if you move the knot in any way of the head tefillin, you have to put it back again. Now there's an interesting Avnei Nezer. Avnei Nezer wants to say that if you borrow somebody's tefillin and you change the knot to make it smaller, he holds you're not yetzer tefillin. Why? Because he says, it says ukshartam, it has to be a kesher. A kesher means kesher shakayama, permanent knot. And if it's not, if you're changing the knots back and forth, so then it's not called a permanent knot. But most poskim disagree, and the Rebbe emphatically disagrees with him. And the Rebbe quotes out earlier sources, but the Rebbe writes, he brings a proof from Torah itself. When the Jews camped, it says, Al pi Hashem yachanu, Al pi Hashem yisol. They camped based on Hashem, and they traveled based on Hashem. Even though they could have been in a place for half a day, and they traveled, but the Torah says that was a camping. In other words, because it's a mitzvah, the mitzvah makes it a permanency. So even if you change the size of the tefillin, but then you're wearing it as a mitzvah, so even though it's not a permanent knot, halachically it's called a permanent knot, even though you changed it and you're going to be changing it back. But again, most people disagree with the Avnei Nezer is not at all, they don't hold like that. What? We didn't get there yet. Okay. Now, like this. You have to, there's a whole question in halacha. Do you put on the tefillin sitting or do you put on the tefillin standing? So, in halacha itself, basically, it says you stand for both. In Kabbalah it says you sit for the hand tefillin. You sit for the hand tefillin and then you stand up for the head tefillin. Okay, so that's a whole thing because here, one second. No. He says here, okay, now that brings down Shechunah, 1 second. Okay, no chatzitza. Remember, the kids also brings it down. Okay, but the pearl, the minig ha'ilov is that we stand. The Sfardim have a minig that they, in fact, according even to Allah, you put it onto the hand sitting, and then you sit down and make the bracha. That's what some people say. By the Sfardim, they have a minig, they sit down during the hand tefillin completely, and then they put on the head tefillin. There was a time, they say, that the Rebbe put on the hand tefillin sitting, but then in the later years, they say the Rebbe changed, and even the hand tefillin he put on standing. I don't know, it wasn't verified, this is what they say. But, so you have to, now, when a person makes a bracha of the tefillin, you have to say, Lo niach tefillin. You have to emphasize halachically the lamed, because the word tefillin should really have two lameds, because it comes from the word pelel, to judge. It comes from other words that mean two lameds. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, you're really supposed to say it should be called tefillin, but we don't say tefillin. So when you say the lamed, it has to have a dogash in it, means you emphasize the lamed, lo niach tefillin, because really it should be a double lamed. And we only say one lamed, so therefore you have to emphasize, it says even in Kitzur, really tefillin lashon palila v'hechacha should be two things like that. But the hand tefillin, everybody says you stand. For the head tefillin, I'm sorry, everybody says you stand. Okay, that we learned already. 1 second. Okay, now, you're not allowed to have any chatzitza. You're not allowed to have any separation between the tefillin and your body. So therefore, we were discussing the other day what happens if somebody has a cast or a bandage. You can't put a bandage over a bandage or a cast with a bracha. And talking about where the box goes on the elbow, and the muscle, I mean. So over there, you can't have any separation. As far as the 7 times that we learned, there's not a problem. Concerning the head tefillin, it says you can't have anything a chetzitza. Now, long hair big hair, according to many opinions, is a chatzitza. According to many opinions, it's not, because it's your natural hair. So in Kitter, he says you shouldn't have it because it's, a Goyish style. Jews always had short haircuts, and the Goyim had long, big haircuts, and it's gaiva. Okay, if they grow, he says a chatzitza. But if they're grown because you're supposed to grow them, or the hair, like for a nazir, wearing tefillin is not a chatzitza because he has to have the hair. Somebody needs to have their hair grown, so then it's not a shayla of a chatzitza whatsoever, even if the hair is long.
We have new itzulis and it sheds.
It sheds?
You get new itzulis.
Not if the leather, they shouldn't shed.
The place where they cut it, it sheds a lot.
Yeah, no.
When they're new, they shed.
Just the corner.
No.
The whole thing sheds even when it's leather?
Yeah.
I never had saw it. Okay, anyway, yeah.
So if that gets on your whole...
No, that's not a problem. What? Man, where's it to pay? Has to ask a shaila. Oh. Okay, next. Okay, we learned that even if you take out by mistake the head tefillin first, you still have to put on the hand tefillin first. And just some of these we learned already. Okay, another thing. In the hand tefillin, you have the yud. Now the yud, according to halacha, is supposed to be touching the bias. The yud of the tefillin have to be touching the bias. In fact, in halacha it says, even when you have them in the bag, when you're not wearing them, when you wrap up the tefillin, the yud of the ritzua should be touching the bias even when it's in the bag, not only when you're wearing it. That's why in the tefillin they have the cutouts, in the shalyad, in the cover and in the actual little cover, that they should be able to put, the yud should be touching the bias itself. Now what happens, okay, so now you have a pair of tefillin, we can't put on tefillin now anyway. So you have a pair of tefillin. So normally the way the tefillin works is they have the mabarta. Mabarta is the place, mabarta is literally means the cutout where the ritzua goes through. Okay? Now usually when you put on tefillin, that's at the bottom. And that's the way it's supposed to be, at the bottom. The bottom of the box should be the mabarta. But what happens if you're a left-handed person, you're borrowing a righty's tefillin? So what you need to do is switch the tefillin around that the mabarta is on top of the bias. Because otherwise you're not going to be able to put it on the left hand. There's no way you could do it. So then, even though by your tefillin, if you're left-handed or right-handed, your tefillin are always the thing that the mabarta is called, that the ritzua passes through, is always at the bottom. But if you meet somebody who's left-handed and you have to put tefillin on with him, it's going to come out. You have to turn the bias around, that where the strap goes through is on top of the bias rather than at the bottom of it. But there's no choice. It says in halacha that's what you got to do.
No, you can't turn the ritzua, right?
No. No, you have to redo the kesher. It's not going to help, because if you do the ritzua, it's going to be on the outside. It's going to be facing outside. Unless you remake the ritzua, and that's a good way to make. No. Anyway, it's supposed to be like that. You're not allowed to talk between the shalyad and the shorosh. Putting on the hand tefillin, you're not allowed to talk. It says in halacha, you're not allowed to even make eye motions or motions with the hand, even though you're not talking. Between the hand tefillin and the head tefillin is like during Krishma. No motions, no movements, no eye motions, because the bracha that you're putting on the shalyad is also going for the shorosh. Because according to many opinions, the shorosh has two brachas. Laniach tefillin, even though those people that make two brachas on the head tefillin, yeah? According to them, there's two brachas for the head tefillin. There's laniach tefillin and al mitzvahs tefillin. But the bracha laniach tefillin you say on the hand tefillin also goes for the head. And then they make the additional bracha al mitzvahs tefillin with Baruch Shem. But Therefore, you're not allowed to talk, and therefore we learned this. You make it fast that even the fingers you don't put on until you put on the head tefillin to minimize the separation between the hand tefillin and the head between the bracha. And if somebody made a hefsin, they talk things not pertaining to tefillin, then they have to make a new bracha on the head tefillin. But then they only make a mitzvah's tefillin. What?
Second bracha.
Chabad doesn't. Chabad doesn't. No. In Shulchan Aruch itself says you do, by the way. Yeah. The Sfardim I don't think do. They don't make a separate bracha. Because again, it's based on Kabbalah, all that stuff. But normal Jews say a bracha on the Shorosh also, but al mitzvah still. And then they say Baruch Shem. Then you for sure, everybody holds you have to. What? Now the question is, am I allowed to say Amen Yeshmei Rabbah between the hand and the head if that's going to cause a new bracha? So some poskim say you can't, you shouldn't, and Dr. Rebbe Siddur says you could, and therefore you should. So our custom is, let's say you're in the middle of putting on tefillin, not Rabbeinu Tam's, Rashi's, and you hear they're saying Baruch Hu or Kedusha or something like that, you answer it, even though you're causing a new bracha to be made, it doesn't matter. No.